I'm with the Natural History Museum, which is not a traditional museum. We were formed in 2014 to model a different vision for what a museum is and does in the context of the climate and biocultural diversity crises, working with Indigenous and frontline leadership leading movements to protect sacred places, waters, and land for the generations to come. And we are so grateful to be hosting tonight's event, which is associated with the Red Road to DC totem pole journey for the protection of sacred places. I am going to, before I tell you more about that, kick it off to Tyson Running Wolf from Blackfeet Nation, who is going to offer a grounding and a prayer to open this event in a good way.
Okay, thank you, Becca. I'll say a prayer. I'm going to include in my prayer our chief, Earl Old Person, who's not doing too well. So we'll pray for him too and keep him in your thoughts and prayers. Kakaheo napi, ayo napi natusi, ayo estapata pio kipitaki kokomikiksu, ayo pasuatsis, paksa pasuatsis, so me manakapi boy. Akimoke, Ispomake, Ispomakinan, Kimokinan, Aspomosani stew and Stuxapo, that Stuxapo Hilla. Everything will be good with him. I always the Padapio Paspomos, Vistu Suatsis. Everything will have a good presentation today. Ionatusi aspomos kistaki komopishtan nanamskax motoki kitskana krixomitax aspomos anistu ikinokomi apokono no move the okogats and that everything goes ixugapi natusi. Io is the batpio paspomos nitsitapimix. As for 6 8 tapi nitsitapi amaskapi pikani 6 kaina exato pizza. Aspomos anistu. Nogosix, Iniske, Makiaskis, Kiaki, Makoi, Aksa, Putas, Pupiak, Natu Makoyaki, Mason. Io is the bad field, Aspomos, the stomach sea pokax, Aspomos, Nitsitapemix that are here and taking part in the presentation, that everything goes Ixugapi, Natusi. Take Seipomapi off of us, which is negative energy, but Ixugapi back on us, which is all good. Sugapi gukit, na kurikit asamokan. Ayo is the padipiopi, na tawapi, nidan skatstimo, komotani na piosin nistuatsamani. That will live a long life and all will be good and will continue with survival. Ken.
Thank you, Tyson, for your prayer and for grounding this event in good intention. The Red Road to DC. This is an initiative launched by the House of Tears Carvers of the Lummi Nation, who for 20 years have been carving and creating a series of totem poles that they have transported to different communities who are facing similar threats to water and land, treaty rights, and sacred sites, to bring energy, to build alliances, to generate media attention and raise awareness. And this year is the largest journey yet. The Natural History Museum is one of several organizations, including Native Organizers Alliance, Cecilia, Illuminative, working with the House of Tears Carvers on this journey that kicks off July 14th, next week, and we'll visit the Snake River Dams, Bears Ears, Grand Canyon, Chaco Canyon, Black Hills, Anishinaabe lands threatened by the Line 3 pipeline, Bay Mills Indian community by the Straits of Mackinac threatened by the Line 5 pipeline, Standing Rock, and the Yankton Sioux tribe along the Missouri River. Finally culminating in Washington, D.C. on July 29th, where we will be delivering the totem pole to the Biden-Harris administration with an event on the National Mall. and the monument really, the monument, I call it a monument. I think of it as a monument, you know, in this time of a national reckoning with American history and structural racism, and as monuments to colonialism are toppling, our society is grappling with what is it that takes their place? What are the histories and the values that we choose to carry forward into the future? And this totem pole stands as a reminder of the promises made to the first peoples of these lands and waters, as well as to our collective ancestral obligation to care for the world we share in common for the generations to come. This event tonight is part of our virtual journey, lifting up the places that the totem pole won't be driving to. And Badger 2 Medicine is one of those. So I want to thank you a big thank you to Jennifer Ferenstein from the Wilderness Society for organizing tonight's event, and she will be moderating a discussion following a presentation of the film Our Last Refuge, which is about the fight to protect Badger 2 Medicine. And we'll also be hearing from Terry Tatsy and Tyson Running Wolf of Blackfeet Nation. So with that, we will invite you to sit back and enjoy this film. It's about 30 minutes, and then we'll have a 30-minute conversation following. Thank you.
We've been here since the beginning of time. Our creation stories involve the lands and landscape here.
We have teepee rings and ceremonial structures that date back 10,000 years.
Our world was tied to the land. We were the land and the land was us. It wasn't until after 1805 and the American Louisiana Purchase, where they, in their minds, thought they bought this territory that was ours, that we began to have contact with the Americans.
My great-great-great-grandfather, his name was Wolf Calf. He was around 12 years old when he fought Meriwether Lewis.
Captain Lewis and 3 of his best men encountered a group of our Blackfeet teenagers. Captain Lewis told us through sign language that now the Americans were the new bosses in town, and soon we're going to be trading firearms to your enemies. So none of this was going over too well. And the boys whispered to themselves, let's pull off the coup of the century. Let's humble the Americans.
And of course, what the young boys didn't know is they were dealing with some very skilled, military-trained individuals.
And in that battle, one of them was stabbed to death, and another one was shot in the back running away.
This was an initial blood that was drawn by the Americans. There was no way we could have suspected that this first conflict incident would become not just a flood, a tsunami that would practically carry our people away.
They beat us through germ warfare. When that didn't kill us off enough, they killed all the buffalo, so we starved to death. Then when that didn't work, they put us on reservations.
We used to be in Fort Benton. That was our agency. They pushed us to Shodo. From Shodo, they pushed us what is called Old Agency. They pushed us here. If it wasn't for these mountains, they'd push us into Pacific Ocean. This is where it stopped. And this is what we're going to keep. We're going to fight for this area that we call our home.
Imagine a landscape with soaring limestone peaks that come in waves and crash up against the Great Plains. And out of that springs this wonderful diversity of magnificent trees and animals and water.
Language really waters down what you're feeling there.
It's like, it's so spiritual. It's like where Creator lives.
Christians, Catholics, everybody else go into this house to pray. This is our house right here.
All of our area, especially the mountain front, is sacred to our people. They went in there, they camped, they hunted, they done things fasted.
It is a landscape that is so loaded with Blackfeet activity, with human activity, with the souls of the elders, with the ghosts of the elders.
It's just always been intertwined. In time immemorial, we've always had we've been part of it.
All of a sudden, somebody comes in there and wants to tear it up and rip it up. And for a few bucks, you know. I mean, it's like somebody gonna go, do something to your family. The question was, how do you feel about that? Well, obviously you're gonna defend it.
Well, I found out about the initial leasing by a public meeting that was held at the community center in East Glacier.
They were basically telling us, we are here to get your comment, this isn't a done deal, and we knew they were lying to us.
This thing was kind of sprung upon us all of a sudden. At least that's the feeling we got.
The leasing of the Badger Two Medicine region was part of a large-scale mineral leasing campaign in the early days of the Reagan administration.
During the Reagan-Watt years, everything was leased, including the Badger. It was nowhere safe.
It was a kind of a slapdash approach, and oh well, what the heck, and the whole thing was just leased.
When the leases were first issued, the United States government did what's called a finding of no significant impact.
The government in those early days took the position that signing a lease did not impact the environment and therefore did not require a significant environmental analysis because all a lease was a piece of paper.
They said, we're not really out there doing anything yet. These other things can come later because we're just signing pieces of paper now.
The problem with that reasoning was that the decision whether to allow drilling is made at the lease stage. After that, the government can regulate where on the lease the drilling will occur, on what conditions it will occur, but they cannot regulate whether it will occur.
And actually, it's not legal to lease without taking that deeper look, and it's not legal to lease without looking at cultural resources, which they did not do.
They are required by federal law, and they were then, to consult with the Blackfeet tribe. We have reserved treaty rights on the Badger Two Medicine area.
But in that time, there was no consultation with the Blackfeet. They just leased them.
It's a manifest destiny. They felt that they have a God-given right to come out here and just take it from us.
When I'm in there hunting, I'm in there as a hunter, but at the same time, you know you're in a very holy, sacred place. The feeling that you get when you're in there is almost like you are connected to that land. You are just like that tree, you're like that animal, you're a piece of that ecosystem where you're part of Creator. You are actually back in that time when you were just pure, when you're as pure as the water, as pure as those trees, and as pure as those medicines that are out there.
First of all, it's not hard to see the beauty in the place, you know, but it's more than that. And it's like if you look at a map and see where it sits in the ecosystem, you can see how valuable it is to the ecosystem as a whole.
Out onto the prairie, up into the park, down the Rocky Mountain front, the Badger 2 Medicine is the best habitat there is.
What you don't see are this network of roads. You don't see, man's footprint on the land.
It's this perfect transitional landscape that's got flora and fauna that can support everything.
What you see, what you smell, what you feel are the same things that any person standing there 10,000 years ago would have felt, seen, smelled the very same things.
The mountains are kept pristine and sacred for a reason. That is the last refuge, the last cultural refuge of the Blackfeet.
Around 1870 or 71, we became wards of the government. And a lot of our people were in the darkest times of their lives, of our lives as a tribe.
From 1890 until 1978, so for 88 years, it was against the law to practice any part of your religion. Anything dealing with your traditional culture, religion, ceremonies was on the list of Indian offenses. You could go to jail for that.
Our mothers and fathers and our grandmothers and fathers were basically told, be an Indian's bad. You can't speak your language, you can't practice your religion, you can't take part in your ceremonies, you can't be an Indian.
And during that time, the Badger 2 Medicine area became a place to practice ceremony. It's the only place they could go without being reprimanded or getting in trouble for practicing ceremony. That was the last refuge for just that freedom to be themselves, to be who they were.
Our people have lost their cultural identity due to the reservation period. And being Native was outlawed. Now it's not outlawed, and our people are going back to it, and they're starting to get stronger and healthier. And this is a key component to our survival is the Badger 2 Med.
Blackfeet find solace and healing in the Badger 2 medicine. That's where they go. Where else are they gonna go? Some may go to church, but many others are going to the mountains. So to take that humanity and that spirituality away from the wilderness, away from the mountains, and replace it with something so alien as an oil well or a gas well. Something that is of no use to the community, particularly. No use to the community, no benefit to the community. It's definitely going to take a lot away from here. A lot away. It's going to take a lot away from the Blackfeet tribe.
Everybody who lives along the front of the mountains has been involved, one way or the other.
Everybody was telling us there's nothing you can do. A contract has been let for the bulldozers to come and build the road.
There was a lot of phone calls, outrage throughout our community.
And we decided to form some kind of group organization.
We just decided that we had to do something.
We spread the word, and it became more and more known of the impacts that may happen. We did a big banner, put it on Main Street of East Glacier, 100 feet long.
We literally set up camps, and we covered all the roads.
There were even some demonstrations, I think, in Missoula, of the Blackfeet working with these environmental groups.
There was always a distrust with our people and non-tribal people to begin with, just because of our history. But once they've seen common ground and the potential to work together to protect a place that was important to everyone, regardless of where they came from, then that became the common ground.
And when that energy went out all over. And people have gravitated to help.
Some of the lessees actually came and looked at the area and just said, you know, it's a disgrace to violate this area, rape this landscape, you know, and voluntarily relinquish their leases.
But not every oil lease was retired. There were 17 remaining in the Badger II Medicine, and an oil man from Louisiana, Sidney Longwell, kept pushing to develop his lease, and that led to his lawsuit.
I'm William Perry Pendley, president of Mountain States Legal Foundation, a nonprofit public interest legal foundation in Lakewood, Colorado. The foundation's always looking for opportunities to protect property rights, and that's what this is all about. This is about a property right, the right to drill on a leasehold issued by the United States government. And our objective with every case, to the degree that we can, is to get to the Supreme Court of the United States and win a landmark ruling.
Mr. Longwell sued, saying that the federal government had been delinquent in handling his lease.
How long does someone have to wait for the government, not to say yes or no, but to make a decision, just simply make a decision? Give us your answer.
Yeah, it's taken a while, but how long did it take the physical, the geological, the biological, the cosmic processes to produce this landscape? And for what purpose is their mission? The odds of finding much in the way of oil and gas are small. Even they've admitted that.
This is not about gas. This is about running over us again. This is about taking, manifest destiny. How dare you, little redskins?
What if they say, well, all right, you just let us continue to have these leases? What kind of a foothold are they trying to establish? I think it's a power game.
They want to fight to the end to set a precedent.
If we drill in the Badger II Medicine, we essentially have told the American people there is no place that's off limits. There is no place that's too special, too important, too valuable, and that places oil and gas development above all other uses, all other values. Basically, it says any place is open.
Sidney Longwell's view is, hey, we need energy. We need the ability to heat our homes and drive our cars and operate our systems, and I want to be part of that. If he finds natural gas and in the quantities that we're talking about, well, Katie barred the door. It's great news. It's great news for Mr. Longwell. It's great news for the local county. It's great news I think it's great news for the tribe. I think their lives would be vastly improved economically from this.
When I was a young boy, in my home, my father was a tribal leader, nationally known Indian leader, but a tribal leader. And a lot of the real old, full-blood elders would come to my home just to visit. There was one old man in particular. He wasn't a political leader or anything. He just liked to come and visit. And before he would leave, almost every time, he would tell my dad, "You know, Ilaf, I long for those long, happy times when we were poor, but we didn't know it." And I used to tell my dad, what does he mean? What does he mean? Finally, one day we had a discussion about it. And he said, well, do you think he means that was a time when they didn't want anything? And the light bulb kind of went off in my head. That our people of that time, happiness was just what I had today. I have enough today to take care of my family and myself. then I'm happy. And one day someone come along, a non-Indian world, and said, oh, look at you Blackfeet. Look how poor you are. Look how you live. Look at these people down there. Look what they got. That's the way you should live. And we started wanting what other people had instead of being happy with what we had. And when we started wanting that, we weren't happy anymore. So when we can quit wanting those things, and the money that comes from oil and gas development, maybe we'll start being happy again.
I went all the way over to fight in Iraq, and I come back here and I'm fighting the same battle. My home is being attacked. This is my Vatican.
As a county commissioner, we realize the possible benefits from development through revenue. But in spite of that, as a county commission, we are opposed to the development of this site.
The words, "this land is sacred," are just words. You need to go there to understand it. This land is our past, our future. It gives us life, and it is vital in the continuation of Blackfeet identity.
We ask you humbly to open your hearts and your minds and free your spirits and see the land as we see it and understand it as we see it and understand it's a place that has to be preserved.
The effort to stop oil and gas drilling in the Badger II Medicine is important, but it's about more than that. It's about perpetuity. It's about protecting the Badger II Medicine forever. And in many ways, the voices of the Blackfeet are the most important voices in that effort.
Knowing what we know now, looking back through the lens of history at what a crushing blow after blow after blow to that culture, and then say, oh, just sit tight, we're just gonna do it again a little bit. It's insane. It's like the least we could do, the very least, to begin to atone for what we've stripped from the Blackfeet and other indigenous cultures. The least we can do is protect those sacred lands.
It's an ironic point that the initial encounter with the Americans was the incident at the Badger II Medicine River back in 1806. That was the first conflict incident. And here, this latest conflict incident has awakened us to the peril that this landscape is in an unprotected state.
The Badger issue has been a way for our community just to move forward together, and it united a lot of people. It's just not this trend where, yeah, we fight and we got the leases canceled. It's not like that. You know, I've been involved just in this year. You know, I'm already thinking the future of the Badger II Medicine, and I know other people of my generation, and you know, everyone is thinking about the future of the Badger II Medicine.
We, at this point in time, have the ability to speak and indeed have the moral responsibility to speak for future generations, speaking for the unborn of all species. Who is going to protect that land if we don't?
I think we're live. Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Ferenstein with the Wilderness Society. I want to thank you for watching the film with us. It's such a powerful film. It really never gets old, and I love seeing all my friends and familiar faces on it. I just wanted to give you a really quick update since the film was made about the status of the several leases that were mentioned at the end of the film. The good news is the Moncrief lease, which was adjacent to the Solonix lease, that lease has been permanently retired. The leaseholder dropped its case in the courts and settled, and the Blackfeet and our partners worked together, and that was a great victory. So the only legal case still pending is the Solonix case, led by Mountain States Legal Foundation. They continue to pursue that case to try to get the lease uncanceled. But we will fight that lease. We have a great case. We have great partners and great support. But as long as that threat remains to the Badger 2 medicine, we'll all stand together to keep that lease from ever being reinstated. And then with that, I just want to say a few words about Tyson Running Wolf and Terry Tatsy. I'm so grateful to be here tonight from their homes in really right near the Badger 2 medicine. Both of these men have served as members of the Blackfeet Tribal Business Council. Both care deeply about the Badger 2 medicine and have a personal and cultural connection to the Badger 2 medicine. Tyson is a member of the House of Representatives here in Montana and is serving the people of Montana and the people in his county, and continues to do so. He has a strong connection to the land, hunting, hiking, and packing there. And I was lucky enough to go to Washington, D.C. with Tyson a number of years ago and talk with leaders there. And Tyson, you are instrumental in getting the leases canceled and convincing Sally Jewell, then the Secretary of Interior, to cancel those leases. And just that experience was just amazing to be there with you. So I'm very grateful for that as well. And we had some good laughs too. And then Terry, I'm honored to know you for quite a long time. And you are a member of the Blackfeet Nation, grew up on the reservation, and I think of you as an educator, somebody who's taught me just a little bit about the connection and the need for practice to connect our youth and the youth of the Blackfeet country to the Badger and to other important cultural sites, because that's the connection that will, over time, build the vision for and the traditional ways and the health and cultural survival of the Blackfeet people, and then for your work makes it so other people, non-tribal members, also can feel and experience and enjoy that place in its natural ways. So I want to thank you as well. I guess I'm going to turn it over to you, Tyson, to kick it off, and Terry's going to wrap up for us. But I really just wanted to ask you about your personal experiences, or really anything you want to talk about that ties into this film, or things you've been thinking about recently.
Thanks, Jen. I didn't know that I was going to go first, but that's all right. I'll try my best to keep it within an hour and 20 minutes. I'm just joking. You know, the last few days I've really been preparing and getting ready for our big circle camp, where we bring the societies together and we open all our sacred and holy bundles. And the next few days, we'll be doing that within a week. But in that time frame, I reflect back and think about some of the lessons learned that I've taken from being in the Badger 2 medicine. I reflect back to people that I've known and places that I've been. And I always think of my grandpa Melvin and a little bit of my dad, but mostly them old guys, like I said, my grandpa, Terry's uncle, big man, and the stories they would tell about their grandfathers and their their dads being back in there in the Badger 2 medicine and exploring. It always amazes me of their abilities to go ahead and just pull up and say, we're going to go, we're going in. And I always wondered, how was the coordination to make that happen? Because they would have to ride out from the prairie and ride into the Badger 2 medicine. It's not like they just had a drive your big truck up there and how we do it nowadays and whip both sides and get in there. They had a day to come from the prairies to get to the foothills, spend there, and then another day riding in, spike camp in somewhere, and then ride all the way back into the middle fork of the Flathead. And they didn't have all the sophisticated stuff we had. They just had, we said, their raw bone ability. That's what I call it. I think I have a little bit of that in me still, but it always amazes me that they were able to do it and persevere. And it reflects back to the even further and further and multi-generations back of like people would say institutional knowledge, but it wasn't. It was landscape knowledge that they had of how to get through and how to, couldn't get a mercy flight in there to get you out if you got hurt. So you just had to be patient and take your time and enjoy it. So in all that whole time when all the old people were back there and everybody was enjoying themselves and gathering for the winter, hunting and getting roots and cutting trails and finding new places to hunt, the landscape always just took care of them and they took care of it. We still have all our traditional camps that are back there. We know where the Bullshoe camp is. We know where my grandpa's camp is. We know down in Beaver Lake where everybody would camp in them specific areas. We knew down on the lower end of Crucifix Creek where everybody had their lodges. We always hear the story of the gold that's over on Hall Creek and where they were stashing all the gold. And so we're always looking for that too in some form or another nowadays, but I think they could hit it too well. But we also have, like I'd say, DNA knowledge that sits in us about just how to survive and to have the area as our, like we said, as our last refuge. The problems that I see today with our youth and even some of the middle-aged folks, they don't take the initiative anymore to use it like we used to. And like in anything else, I always tell them in a lot of my departing words, and you've heard me say it before, Jen and Terry and everybody else, is if we don't use our treaties, we don't use our rights, we're gonna lose it. And so I'm always encouraging anybody and everybody, no matter if you're white, if you're Native American, if you're African American, whatever your race is, use it. Use it. Go back there and enjoy it. It's a very special place. It's been used for 15,000 years that we're documenting through studies and archaeological finds. And so there's this need to get people involved, even at our local level, to go back into Badger 2 medicine. And like I'd say, and excuse me for saying it, but to learn and protect our savage ways. So thank you.
Thanks, Terry, or thanks, Tyson. I really appreciate that. Terry, do you want to speak about it from your perspective?
Yeah, first I want to acknowledge Tyson because he's doing something with his camp and his ceremonies that's really important, fostering that next generation of ceremonial leaders and bundle keepers that need to be continue the practice here on the Blackfeet Nation homeland. But I have these pictures behind me for a reason. They're my grandparents, they're my parents, they're my children, they're my grandchildren. Every one of them have been up there, even my youngest granddaughter, 5-year-old Bailey. It's part of our family ways. And when my grandfather, Francis Bullshoe Sr., was about 15 or 16 years old, in the mid-1920s, he used to go up there with the last of the buffalo hunters before they were, a lot of those that hunted buffalo when they were young men, young boys. And so when he went back there with them as a young 15, 16-year-old boy, he found out how strict the men were in the hunters and how much emphasis they put on their relationship with place and relationships with animals. And Tyson mentioned it earlier, the safety factor, because they didn't have the tools that we have today if somebody got hurt. So safety and protocol and process was very important to him. So he learned from them as a young man. And in the 1930s, they used to show him where the Blackfeet Reservation boundary was, up by Lodgepole Mountain and all these different places along the Continental Divide. And so he learned these areas, and he used to show us when I was started hunting with him, my other grandfather, John, when I was about 12 years old. And by the time I was 15, they both passed. But during that 3-year time frame, they showed me a lot of areas up there. They told a lot of stories about the relationships with the old guys and the things that they learned with them. And so they would go back with these old guys, and they were young, so they would go out and they were the hunters. They would go out and hunt elk, deer, moose, whatever. And when they brought the meat to camp, the old guys that were in camp, they were in their latter part of their 70s. They would cut all that meat and they would dry it and they would smoke it. The reason they did that and cure it back there is because they had to bring out a lot of meat in order to make it lighter. The old guys would cure it. And so they would stay back there for a month or more at a time when they were hunting. So a lot of these stories were shared with us, these practices, and that continuation of training that next generation was really important from what they'd learned and what they'd experienced with the old guys. And when they were about ready to come out of the mountains, they would always kill some elk or deer, gather plants, and bring out some fresh meat along with the dried cured meat. And when they come out of the mountains, they would go down the Birch Creek, the Whitetail Creek, Badger Creek, to Medicine, and they would distribute fresh meat to all the elders, to all the people that lived in these drainages that couldn't go back into the mountains. So they distribute fresh meat plus some dried meat. And they would never keep the meat all to themselves. They would make sure that everybody was fed. And so they were very generous. They didn't go up there for themselves, just themselves. They went up there to help those that couldn't go up there and do that anymore. And so that was something that we kind of learned in the stories we'd heard. And so what happened as young boys in our mid-teens, we learned these things from them. But more importantly, what we learned is that we had to keep continuing that practice, that relationship up there, that understanding of fostering that next generation. And so when our children, my children, reached anywhere from 8, 9 years old, when they were able to help with the gathering of wood, carrying water, caring for horses, all those, setting up camp, when they was able to do all those types of things, that's when we took them up there. My daughter, she went up there when she's 8 years old. So she started taking and learning all these things that were important that I was taught as a young boy. Those responsibilities, those protocols that go with camping. And so that's something I continue today. I've taken my grandchildren up there when they were able to ride, when they were able to help and work with us. And so that's something that I feel is really critical. It's important.
because those generations, that our children, our grandchildren, those future generations, they got to be those practitioners, they got to be the advocates, they got to be the teachers of those future generations about the importance of this place, the relationships that we have with it. So that's really critical, I feel. And one of the things that I'm going to be doing, I've been going back in Badger for 53 years. I started when I was 10 years old. I let Tyson do the math on that. So, for 53 years, I've been going up there now. And it's getting to the time in my life where I still enjoy it. I still go as much as I can. But I feel, and Tyson alluded to it earlier, we're seeing a lot of our younger people maybe not engage with those landscapes and go up there and learn from them as much as they should, because the land and the animals can teach you so much. It's through observation, it's through listening, and all these things that go along with it. So one of the things that I'm going to be doing toward the end of July is I'm setting a camp up at the Birch Creek area. It's called Swift Dam. I'm inviting a lot of the young people to come up, and the kids, to teach them about horsemanship, teach them about packing. I'll have different people talking about backpacking into the mountains and how to prepare for a 2-day trip, how to prepare for a 2-week trip, and the things you have to consider and the supplies you have to consider when you take those different windows of opportunity back there, whether you're on horses or on foot. We'll have people at the camp that will be teaching about the construction of our lodges. And a young lady, my niece, who learned from one of our elders, Omi Crawford, they will both be at the camp, and they'll be talking about how that transfer of knowledge and process of teepee construction was dealt with in how they learned from each other, with each other. So there's these kind of things that's going to be happening in that camp, and I feel it's timely. I don't want just my family to have an opportunity to do these things. There's so many of our young kids that are at risk anymore. They really need to have that opportunity, and that at least that fundamental understanding of how to do this right and safely. And maybe at some point in time, they will go back there and experience some things that maybe be life-changing for them. And that's what I'm hoping will come out of this. And then on a second day, it'll be the Wednesday, I believe, the 28th. I'm going to have some elders that will be telling stories about when their families went up there and they hunted, they gathered plants for medicine, they gathered plants for food, and all these types of activities that they did, and that the stories that were handed down to them from their parents and their grandparents. So all these things are going to take place, and I just want to make sure that the next generation, those future generations, are understand the importance of that area, the relationships with everything up there, landscape, animals, plants, and how to read the land, and how it can tell you a story, how you got to understand the behavior of animals and how that helps you when you're hunting. And so these are the things I'll be introduced to more than anything. And so that's my I guess effort to continue fostering that next generation of practitioners up there. And I'm really proud to say that Tyson is doing the same thing with our ceremony and our bundle keepers that he's working with and teaching. And this is something we continue to do, and we learn from our elders. And I'm proud to say I did get to hunt with Tyson's grandfather up there, and I really enjoyed that. The stories that they shared was just unbelievable, and experiences they had. And so, like, for 53 years I've been up there, but it's time to start handing that stick off slowly but surely, to make sure they can continue that way of life and protect it. A family can't protect those areas of importance, but a whole army of people that have a common interest can. So that's what I hope to see happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. I really appreciated that. We just have a few more minutes, but I know both Tyson, from your experience working in the state legislature and going to Washington, D.C., and Terry, you've been involved also with the Rocky Mountain Tribal Leaders Council and sort of these connections of tribes. And you were talking about the power of people and families, and then it seems like coalescing that power and having a vision for what going maybe beyond like consultation where tribes are asked what their opinion is versus having free and prior consent before activities happen. I mean, if that had been the case, the badger never would have been leased in the first place for oil and gas development. So it seems like we're at this cusp. There's almost an evolution and maybe a revolution in terms of tribal sovereignty. And I just, from either one of your perspectives, are you optimistic, or I'm just kind of curious how you feel about that?
I'll defer to Tyson first.
Okay. You know, that's a great question, Jen. None of this would happen without collaboration. It sometimes even our own tribe kind of sits on the back burner because we're always suspect of everything that's happened to us over so many years of broken treaties, broken promises, lies, our own families taken away from us. And so we're suspect of anybody and everything. And there's a new generation of folks that are out there now that are able to stand up on their own 2 feet and not stand there in the background, not saying a word, waiting for somebody else to speak for us. And that's due to not having been influenced by the boarding school era. Like I said, we're liberated. There's a generation that's coming up that is able to stand up in front of Congress or in front of the state legislative group or to different venues and articulate specifically what we mean to say without anything being held against us. And I think that voice is being heard everywhere, that maybe these guys do know something. Maybe they're just not some, like they'd say, some dumb Indian sitting in the back waiting for a handout. Well, maybe they have some of the key and the answers to what needs to happen on their own lands, in their own traditional lands, in their own cultural and patrimonial items. I can totally say that the Blackfeet are intact, and that's what helped us, was collaborating, being open, and in prayer. It did help us. Everything we've done was based on that. We're totally intact as people. The land, the people, the buffalo, and the education.
Thank you, Tyson. Any thoughts, Terry? You want to maybe kind of close us out? We just have a couple more minutes, really.
Yeah, one of the things that Tyson referred to as the boarding schools, and it was a real place of oppression. I was sent to boarding school when I was 6 years old. I finally got out there when I was 12. But you know, there used to probably be 30 or 40. They call us little boys from probably 10 years old, 5 or 6 years old in the little boys wing. And what would happen if one individual was being bad or wasn't going to sleep right away? All of us got pulled out of bed and spanked, regardless if we were sleeping or not. And so we went through this, and I went through it as a young boy. And so a lot of our people that went through that prior to me were, through that oppression, were scared to talk. But now we're seeing people that understand their rights. They understand if they don't say anything that nobody else will. So they're becoming a strong voice, and through prayer, through ceremony, and just through us being who we are as a people, We're known as aggressive. I think we're getting back out there and doing that. I know we are. And with Tice and them getting into in state politics, the rest of us getting into tribal and at the regional and national levels, not just politics, but just working with organizations and groups that are real advocates for place and landscape and integrity. We're speaking up and we are being heard.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. And I think the Red Road Tour is one example of sort of literally and figuratively connecting cultural landscapes and tribes to one another. And I urge people to go check out the website and to check out the Blackfeet Nation's website and to stay involved and continue to learn and to really take advantage of the opportunities that might come with this administration, with the Biden-Harris administration, that certainly seem like we're going in a new and open direction, and making our voices heard, I think will make a difference. So thanks everybody for being here. Special thanks to you and Tyson, Terry and Tyson. And we finished at 7. You guys did just what I was hoping would happen. So thank you so much, everybody. Take care. Bye. See you later.